Hi, you are on Messy in the Middle with Jeanie, and I am Jeanie, and I am middle aged, middle income, middle America, and life is a mess. So, we're just going to talk about the mess together. And I started out these videos by doing a craft because I was really uncomfortable talking in front of the camera. I will be honest, I'm still pretty uncomfortable talking in front of the camera, but I am getting to be more comfortable with it, and I really have to put my craft area together so that I can actually do crafts. So it's going to take a little bit before I get back to doing that. Anyway, point being, I am kind of going through my history so that you have a foundation for who I am and where I've been and the experiences that I've had so that you can kind of understand my viewpoints on things and that sort of thing. Anyway, um, I just recently changed jobs, and if you've been watching my videos, you know that um, that was tumultuous for me. I really felt like the job that I was in is the job that I was intended to be in, and that I would be there for the rest of my days. And that I used to say all the time, and I said this in the last video, I thought they would drag me out of there in a pine box. I really was planning on being there forever. That wasn't meant to be for a multitude of reasons, but I have learned through all of the changes and all of the things that I've been through in my life that it is really important to take note of what is happening around you in your life. And when you are going through a rough time, often it's preparing you for something. And so, in this instance, I feel like the rough time I was having at my previous job was preparing me to be ready to lead it. And I do feel like um, it was, oh, this is nice. These are this baby seat. These are the high chairs that we use for our, they're not really high chairs. They're little squatty booster seat things with trays on them that we use for the grandbabies when they're here. So they're just stacked up right here. So I just took it down because knowing my luck, it'll fall down in the middle of the video and make a big crash and cause a mess. Anyway, messy. Here we are. So what I've learned is that when you start to see things become really frustrating and irritating, and you don't really understand what's happening, and it just seems like every single thing is telling you that where you are is not in the right place, that you should listen to that. And um, and because I listen, because once I figured out that things weren't going to change where I was, that it was that the reason why is because it was time for me to go. Um, it was much easier to leave. And so I am in the middle of transition into my new position, and the person that I am replacing in my position is not quite out. Today was her last day. And so it's been kind of awkward for me to um, for me to try to um, uh, go ahead and get myself situated and settled into my new position while there's someone still living in it. So it's kind of hard to find your space and to get comfortable in your space when there's somebody else there. And so I'm finally feeling like I'm going to be able to settle in and hit my stride, and I'm really excited about that. So, um, I went back to salon life, and we haven't quite gotten there in my history. So I'm going to run through another section of my history. I do like to keep the videos about 30 minutes, and because everything's been a little crazy in my life lately, I have not kept up with the videos. So I'm going to go ahead and finish out my job history, and then and again, changing jobs is what sparked me to think that maybe I should give you a little bit of history about where I've been and the things I've done. It's interesting. It's been very diverse. So, um, anyway, so where I left off last time was that I had been in school, intending to get an education, to be a helicopter mechanic as a civilian. Excuse me. Because my time in the Marine Corps and my intent to do that as a Marine was not going to pan out. And I had come home from that. So, but you may or may not recall in the last video that my stepfather passed in the midst of that schooling, and I ended up coming home to support my family. By that point, uh, I had been gone from home for quite a while, and I was very poor at keeping in touch with my stepsister. And so, and I own that. I was the older one, and I was the one that left, and she was a high school student, and she was just trying to make it through life. And um, I was not good at keeping in touch with her, and I had become not estranged, but definitely we were not in the kind of constant contact that we could have been had I been more diligent. So, um, mostly I mean, obviously I knew that she was hurting and struggling, um, but the people who I had come home with the intent of being there for in a more physical way were my mom and my biological sister. I want to say sister, but I have two sisters, so that's not very descriptive. Um, so my biological sister, and um, the two of them are really struggling, and I felt a strong um, obligation to come home and support them. So I did. And unfortunately, that meant that I never did make it back to school. I settled in back home in northern Colorado, and uh, started to, worked other jobs. So I worked at Pier 1. So that was my uh, second, I guess, third retail job. Um, and eventually worked at Target, and um, I was working both because I was trying to make enough money to support myself and be able to live on my own and all of those things. So I ended up working both jobs, and then I was really feeling like I was in a rut, and I was feeling like I was kind of, I don't know, trapped in the space that I was in. I wasn't happy at home, and I I was really struggling. I had intended to go somewhere and do something with my life ever since I had left for the Marine Corps, and I was back home, and I was working a job that I was working a couple of part-time jobs, and I don't know, I just wasn't feeling like I was really doing anything with my life. So I decided maybe I needed a change of scenery. And uh, my dear friend growing up, who has now since passed, her brother lived in Colorado Springs and actually needed a roommate. So I moved to Colorado Springs, and I really did love Colorado Springs. I had a great time there. I met a lot of friends. I became a bartender kind of oddly. I went into the bar across the street from my apartment and asked the lady if she needed a waitress because I knew nothing about bartending at the time. Asked the lady if she needed a waitress, and she said she didn't use waitresses, but she was looking for a bartender. And I said, well, I have no experience with that, but if you'll teach me, I can learn pretty much anything. So she had, um, she went ahead and said that she'd give me a call, and I thought I would never hear from her again. And well, unless I went in to drink, because it was right across the street, and I was 21 years old at the time, so, or 22, I think by that point. Anyway, so I was gonna probably go in there, so I could probably see her. But anyway, I went home and I got a call the next day. And at the time, I used to wear a rune stone. And for those of you that know what runes are, for don't know what runes are, they're little flat stones that have symbols carved on them. And I was wearing odal, which means home, and which was appropriate at the time. I feel like I was really kind of searching for my home. And so I was wearing this rune, and she said that she had gone home that night and had opened up her bag of rune stones, which I had no idea she was into reading runes, but she had opened up her bag of rune stones, and every single one of the rune stones that was in the bag was either turned face down or on its side, and the only one that was face up was the one that I had been wearing. So um, it was kismet. So she called me and I went back in and she taught me how to be a bartender. And it was a little neighborhood bar, pool league, dart league, and it was fun and I loved it. And I learned how to tend bar and I learned how to take care of getting the drunk regulars out of the door when they were being stupid. And I learned how to remember everybody's drink and know what they had last week and what they had the week before. And I was really good at it. I really loved it. It was a fun job. Um, and it was, they had karaoke, and I actually met my oldest daughter's biological father at karaoke. He was in the army at the time, and he and his friends used to come in and sing karaoke. And so I got to know him pretty well, and we ended up dating, and I ended up being pregnant with my daughter. That did not pan out, and there, he and I just were not meant to be. But we did make a beautiful girl, and um, was she made me realize that being a mom was really what I needed to be. So that's awesome. And so I ended up leaving the bar. I worked collections for a while, if you can believe that. I mean, weird things that I've done. Um, and just because I felt like being pregnant in a bar was not the healthiest environment, so I decided to leave. And eventually I ended up coming home. And knowing that I was going to have my daughter and I was probably going to need the help of my mom and my sister, and hopefully my stepsister if we could reconnect. There had been some tumultuous things going on when my stepfather passed. And so there was still kind of a distance. And yeah, there was some space there. And so we hadn't bridged that gap as of yet. We had started talking more, and so that was good. And of course, I always wanted her in my life, and so I was glad that we had started to talk a little bit more. And me coming home was a way for me to rekindle that relationship with her, so that was really great. Um, so I came home. I was pregnant out to here. I mean, I was like a house. If I knew how to edit, and if you are new to watching my videos, you'll know that I don't edit. I don't filter. I don't edit. I don't know how to do any of that stuff because I am just not, that's not my thing. Um, but if I knew how, I would show you this picture of me the day that I went to deliver my daughter. I was gigantic. So, um, anyway, we ended up, um, I ended up staying at my mom's house and living out the rest of my pregnancy there. And um, my sister lived there as well. So my biological sister, I keep saying my sister, and I have two. My biological sister and I lived there together. And we had tried to live there together before, and it was right before I left for Colorado Springs, and it was kind of a mess. And anyway, we ended up moving out. my friend and I had moved in. We moved out. It was a whole thing, craziness. Anyway, I ended up moving back into that house. And that's where I was when Emma was born. And we, the picture that I'm referring to is the day that we were standing. I had called my sister and my daddy, and he actually happened to be up visiting. And I started having contractions. Anyway, it was like 2 days worth. I started having contractions. This is my first pregnancy, so I didn't really know what, and I had thought I was having contractions forever. Um, and so but I really started having contractions on Monday night, and I didn't deliver her until 36 hours later on Wednesday morning, um, right at almost 36 hours. Ended up being a cesarean, all of that. But we're talking about jobs. So we already talked about Emma in a different video. So if you want to know more about Emma, you'll have to go there. But there's a whole video about her. So anyway, so what that brought me home while I was pregnant with her, I went to bartending school because I did love being a bartender. And I decided that once she was born, I wanted to go back into bartending and that I would, because I made really decent money and I really loved it. And so I thought, well, if I could go to bartending school and learn how, I could end up becoming a really great bartender that actually had some, yeah, knowledge, I guess. I don't know. I felt like it would hold weight for doing what I wanted to do. So, and in my family, the constant push is go to school, figure out what you want to do, and go to school to learn it. So I did. So I let's see. Um, I had uh, I ended up getting an apartment. Well, I lived with my aunt for a couple of weeks, and then I moved into an apartment, and I lived by myself with my daughter. And I did not have a job at that point. I was using I had paid ahead for my apartment, so I didn't have rent to pay, and I had other means that I'll talk about later. That wasn't like stripping or anything or hooking or anything like that. I had money set aside, and so I was using that money to be able to pay for my other bills and groceries and things like that. And I had a lot of help from family. So we were living in this little apartment, and I was not working. But then I decided that I needed to have a more stable. For some reason, had the impression that living in an apartment wasn't stable. And I'm not really sure why, honestly, because there's plenty of people that live in apartments their entire lives and are perfectly stable and perfectly fine. But for me, it felt very unstable, and I felt like I really needed a home, a house for me and my daughter. So I actually ended up buying a mobile home, which is ironic in my mind, thinking that going from an apartment to a mobile home was going to be different. Um, I feel like, you're still paying rent, you're paying lot rent, even though you're also paying, but my theory was I was paying on something that would eventually belong to me, and my daughter. So, and my thought was once I paid off the mobile home, I would I would get land and I would move it onto some land. Anyway, when I did that, job wise, I ended up finally using that electronic certificate that I had earned years ago, years before that, um, to to get a job working at Celestica. And I don't know how many people know about Celestica, but it was a company kind of like an HP, or I don't know. They built computers. They built computer boards. And so we would build computers for these computer manufacturers. We would build the boards. And because I knew about all the components and all of the little pieces that go on the boards, I was able to um, secure a job doing that. And it paid really well. And I worked 312s on the weekends. And my family was gracious enough to help me out with my baby girl. So that was the job I had for a while. And it was not quite enough to then pay for my expenses. So I went ahead and I had exhausted the resources that I had. And so I was now needing to figure out something else. So I started working as a night desk manager at a retirement home, which was really fun. Believe it or not, it was great. And I had done that job before, right before I had left for the Marines as well. So I guess I had more than one job now that I think about it. I had worked there before. But before I left for the Marine Corps, I was thinking it was only the one job, but I guess I did more than one. Memory, right? As we get older. So I um, uh, I had gone back to working there and was working overnights, and I also secured a position at the same retirement home, working as the head wait staff in their dining room. And so I worked Monday. So you'll have to keep track. I worked Monday through Thursday dinner time at the retirement home. I also worked Saturday and Sunday at lunch. I worked Monday and Tuesday overnight as the night clerk, the night reception. And then I worked Friday, Saturday, and Sunday overnight at Celestica building computers. And when I was still having trouble eating, um, because I wasn't making enough to eat because I had gotten in over my head. By this point, I had bought a vehicle, I had bought a house, I was paying off a trailer, and I was paying lot rent, and I had a daughter to feed, and it was a lot of expenses. And I had incurred all of this, not really understanding about, I was still young and inexperienced enough to understand the concept of like leaving yourself some cushion, because when you figured out every single dollar down to the dollar and then didn't have anything left over to buy food, you went without food. And so I uh, I went through a time where I did not eat. Um, my um, I would eat on Monday through Thursday. I would eat at the retirement home because one of the perks was when we would um, be there working at the end after we had served all of the residents, we all got a plate and we would sit and eat. So 4 nights a week, I had um, I was able to eat dinner. Um, the After that, through the rest of the weekends and the rest of the week, I didn't have money for food. So to keep myself going, I would, um, you know, Emma always had food. So just before you freak out about that, she always had food. She had formula. She had, um, she had baby food. She had all of the things because I was really proactive when early on about making sure that I had stocked up on a lot of stuff, and also because if there was when any little extra dollars that weren't going towards paying for what I needed to went to pay for food for her. So, but that wasn't. I wasn't making enough. So I ended up taking on a position where I could, uh, I cleaned, there were 3 different houses that I cleaned. And so I was doing that on Monday and Tuesday mornings. So if you do the math on that, I don't know that I've ever done the math on that. I don't, I was working, I was barely sleeping. I got Wednesday and Thursday night every week. I got full nights of sleep. But not even that because I had a little girl that was still real little. She was, only a few months old. And so she wasn't sleeping 100% through the night, that sort of thing. And so um, she was, yeah, so I was not eating. I couldn't afford to eat. And the head chef, head cook at the retirement home, I still to this day, and I can't prove it, but I still to this day think that he knew and that he um, purposely made sure that I had food to take home with me so that I could eat. And I still don't know how he knew because he wasn't much older than me. So he just had to be pretty perceptive. Um, or maybe I said something that tipped him off. I don't know. I don't know. But I still to this day feel like the reason that I didn't starve was because I am willing to eat leftovers and he was willing to send food home with me. And he didn't just hand it out to me. What he would do is say, "Oh, I made too much of this," and he would leave it out and tell us, the wait staff, that we could have it. And I would take what I needed to get me through the weekend. So, while I was working overnights and all of that. So, anyway, like I said, I can't prove it. And I don't actually know that that's what was happening, but it seemed really interesting that when I started, there wasn't so much extra. And then not too long after that, there started to be quite a bit extra and plenty for me to take home. So, wherever you are, I hope you know that you probably saved my life. So I am in debt to you and I am grateful for you. I don't even know your name. I don't remember. You would think I would remember somebody's name that did that for me, but it's been so long and there's been so much that I do not have that person's name in my memory. But if you were that person and you are watching this video, know that I am grateful to you because you probably saved my life. So that was the work that I was doing. I was currently doing when I met my first husband. And I didn't meet him. We had met in high school, but we ran into each other again. We were reintroduced, through life experience, whatever. And then I became a stay-at-home mom, and I got to be a stay-at-home mom for a really long time. Part of that was because I was a military wife. He was in the Army. And so we ended up moving um, to Hawaii, and we lived there for 2.5 years. And then we ended up moving to upstate New York, and we lived there for 2 years. And then we ended up moving back to Colorado after Isaac got sick. And there's several videos on Isaac, at least 2, but I think I have mentioned him in pretty much every video. So um, then after we got back to Colorado, because of Isaac's situation, I was in and out of the hospital with him a lot. And one of the parents said, "You should be a parent CNA." I didn't even know that was a thing. So I went and got my CNA license. So now I have studied welding, studied electronics, CNA. So I'm just racking up little certificates of things. and I got my CNA license and started working as a CNA and figured out a way to be a CNA parent. And at that time, the program was a little bit newer, so there was a lot of uncertainty. And I worked for a small company that was really willing to help me out. And so it was good. I loved, it allowed me to be, once we figured out how to, for me to be paid as a parent CNA, then I was able to go back to being at home with the kids, which then afforded me the opportunity to be able to leave my ex-husband when the situation got to be that was required. So I had an income of my own, and I was able to move on with my life. And so, yeah, so there we go. And so I became a CNA, and um, I was a CNA for probably, oh, I was a CNA for almost a year before I ended up leaving my ex-husband. And then um, that was my job for several, well, for a few years until I met my current husband. And when we got married, we decided to that we both wanted to go back to school. And I had always wanted to be a cosmetologist. I had wanted to do hair for a very long time. And so he went back to college because he wanted to get a university degree and a bachelor's degree, and I wanted to be a cosmetologist. So we both went back to school, and we both got I got my license, and so that's 4 licenses now, certificate things. And went, um, he went to CSU, and we ended up, working our schedule out so we could raise our kids. And the majority of the time there was one or the other of us home. And if and during while the kids were in school for the day, um, we would he was in school and I would work or go to school depending on what the time frame was. Once I was out of school, I would work and he would go to school. And then when the kids got out of school, he was usually home by then. And so I could work into the evening. And then he worked overnights because he did security and did bartending. Anyway, so we figured out how to put us both through school and make sure that one or the other of us was pretty much always home. And that was yeah, so that how it was cosmetology. That's how I ended up with that license, which afforded me the opportunity to then own my own business. I had a mobile salon where I did services for seniors, and then once I had done that for a while, I went and got a job at a JCPenney salon, and once I had been there for a little over a year, about a year and a quarter, I decided that I was ready to strike out on my own. So I went and got myself a Sola. Well, I did booth rental before I went to JCPenney, and that was not for me. And then I left JCPenney and I went to Sola, and I had my own business at Sola, which some people liken to booth rental, but it's not really the same thing. Honestly, it was very different in my mind for a lot of reasons, which I won't go into. But if you've done both, you know that they are not the same. Um, and so uh, that was, yeah. Then um, I ended up having to step away from that because Isaac was having more and more trouble. And it became a situation where I needed to be available. So I moved my salon into my house, which reduced my clientele substantially. And the next thing I knew, I was just not able to have a salon anymore. But that was after we ended up attaining a nurse. And so once we had a 40-hour-a-week nurse, that freed up some more time for me to do my salon stuff. and helped me to cling to having a salon for a little while. And then I left from that, and I actually went and got a position at the salon that I am currently working at. So I was there for about 9 months or so, and then I left to go to the job that I just left from, and it was a better fit for where we were at the time as a family. The hours were a better fit, and the pay was a better fit, and so we ended up leaving. And because I was working at the salon for a dear friend, um, she was understanding, and she completely she understood why I had to go, and she was in support of that as much as she could be, right? You know, being my friend and loving me and wanting the best for me, and also feeling like, damn it. um, and so I was gone for about 4 years, a little over 4 years, and now I'm back, and I feel like I am back home. I enjoy the salon. You'll notice that I look more put together when I work in a salon and people are actually looking at the way I look all day. I do a little more to take care of myself. So I'm a little more put together. You'll note in videos going forward that I look a little more like, you know, a grown up, somebody who takes care of themselves. So, um, anyway, so that is my job history. It is long and it is convoluted and it is ridiculous, and there are so many different things in there. And um, in amongst all of that, I feel like I might have skipped something. I've waited tables at bartended. We talked about that. I don't lots of retail. I don't know, all kinds of things. Anyway, if you have questions or want to hear more about any one of those things, by all means, or you just need somebody to talk to about it who understands, by all means, send me a message. But I promise I am getting back on track. And I know I uh, apologized before for not putting out a video every week. For those of you who are watching and who are interested in hearing where I'm going with all of these things, my apologies for not being more diligent. Hopefully, going forward, I will be able to do much better, and I promise that I will make a concerted effort to do so. So my goal is always one video a week, and so this is the video for this week, this last week in May, and um, I just hope all of you are doing well. And this one's a little long, but I wanted to make sure I fit it all in. So I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.